Hello, Steve White, TrekBoy89 for SteveArts89. Well, Star Trek Discovery Season 3, Episode 1. It wasn't as bad as I thought. I mean, the issues I'm caught up on are sort of not particular to the story, of the episode, so much as the overall idea of how dare Alex Kurtzman come in and destroy Star Trek and destroy the Federation. And I don't know, I wasn't as bothered when they destroyed Romulus and Vulcan in the movie series because they were just planets, but destroying the Federation as a whole, I mean, that concept is what is bothering me. The individual episode, individual stories, individual characters, not so much an issue. And I'm finding myself oddly not bothered, or maybe I'm just exhausted from being so upset and outraged for so many months that now we've finally gotten to the episode. It's like a non-event. It's like anticlimactic. But, okay, so I'm so tired. We see the Federation believer guy going through his daily routine. The episode starts off with that. And we got some sort of future tech, which seems a bit ridiculous. He's got like a floating desk. I'm like, why would you waste technology on making a desk that floats? Is there any reason to not have legs on a desk? There's little things that just bug me, but I'm trying not to get caught up on all that little stuff. Basically, he's just waiting for a signal, and he's been waiting for a long time. He's third generation. He's been waiting for 40 years. Apparently, his dad was in Starfleet. His dad's dad. Although they wouldn't have been in active Starfleet, but they were holding on to those ideals. There seem to be a lot of believers holding on to the ideals of the Federation. It's not like everyone was erased or something. There was no snap or anything. It's just it collapsed. So we know that there are still Federation people and people who believe in the ideals of the Federation and elements of it out there. Now, we'll get back to that later. We see the crash, which we already saw in that scene. In the Star Trek universe panel thing, and of course we see them. She survives the crash because of her magic suit, and then after that she does something interesting, which I didn't think she was going to do. She sends a signal to Spock, and she sends the suit up into the time portal, and then destroys it to destroy the time portal to stop the control coming through and all that. So she gets rid of her suit, which means she's just stranded on this planet like a normal person. And of course she meets up with Booker, and his ship's cloaked, and then he attacks her and they fight, and she gets as good as she gets and blah blah blah. And of course, she can fight him and everything, even though he's twice her size and all that, because she's Michael Burnham. And there's some stuff that's mentioned which is interesting, like the Gorn apparently are still a powerful force in the sector. They destroyed 2 light years of subspace. The most interesting thing that I want to know about was the burn. Now, the burn happened 120 years before he was born, so he looks about 30. He's pretty hot, but black don't crack. He could be nearly 40. But then again, that's the actor, not the character, blah, blah, blah. Might have had a very hard life, blah, 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 blah. So we're sort of guessing. I'm just going to say 150 years, but it's probably a little bit longer. The burn was all the dilithium in the universe just exploding all at once. For no apparent reason. They couldn't explain why it happened. They don't know why it happened. They couldn't explain it. They didn't know if it could happen again. They didn't know why it happened, so they don't know how to prevent it. And that's why the Federation collapsed, because they had no warp. They had no starships, basically. But there was some indication that the burn was actually man-made, that it wasn't a natural thing, but there were sort of some suggestions that it was a natural thing, and somehow the Federation burned itself out or something, and people are talking about the whole warp drive not being able to be maintained, and elements that other people are speculating on, elements like the Omega particle and all that sort of stuff. So we don't really get an explanation. I'm guessing it's going to be an element of the season as we go on, a mystery to explain, as opposed to just backstory that has to be established for the rest of the story to go on. It seems like it's going to be part of it. God, I've tried really hard to take better notes this time. I normally take bad notes, like doctor writing. I can't read my own writing, but I still missed a few bits. But because how do you remember all this stuff? So it's about 780 years in the future, 3188. So there's that 150 year gap. So there are still people who remember the Federation, who still wear the badges and believe in it. But it's like people now who believe in history and old movements that don't actually exist anymore. They hope it'll come back, sort of thing. They have faith it'll return. There's still some Dilithian, which is bartered for, and that they're living in a highly capitalist society, which of course is vile. That was one of the great things about Star Trek and Starfleet was there was no money anymore. There was no poverty. There was no greed. All these things were eliminated, and humans were able to live without that and explore humanity without being caught up in all the little petty crap that we're stuck in. And they go to this place, I think it's called Requiem, or actually I think I had different, I can't remember, I wrote it, that's one of the notes I can't read, to trade Michael's antiques for dilithium, and Book turns on her, so she puts her trust in him. She makes a big speech early on about how she has to trust in him, she just has to survive. And she does trust him, but he does betray her, which is disappointing, but I don't know, I'm not going to go into his character because we don't know where his character is going to go yet, but she basically is given over to the Orion and Andorians, who seem to be running the show. They interrogate her, they give her a truth serum, and then she becomes like high, and it's all very over the top acting, and Sonequa actually gets to do some acting, and she gets to slip out of that Michael trying to be a Vulcan sort of thing, and she doesn't do a bad job. She's a likable person. I think she can act. She just had a bad character with bad direction, bad writing in the first 2 seasons. I'm not sure it was really her to blame. And I want to like her because I feel bad, you know, if she sort of got the burden of that. And Book and her end up together again, end up fighting together again, and it sort of shows that her trust in him wasn't totally naive. They end up using portable transporters because they're portable transporters now. They have to wait. They have 30 seconds to recharge, so there's sort of built-in sort of flaws, and so it's not too perfect. And they're beaming all over the place to escape these guys, and they beam into water, and she gets shot but doesn't die like everyone else. And Booker reveals that he has, I keep calling him Booker, reminds me of the Roseanne character George Clooney played in the 80s. Book shows that he has sort of powers to speak to animals and nature, and he uses a flower to heal her, and he has like glowing little dots on his forehead, and there's more to him than, you know, just a hot black guy, so that could be interesting. He wants to basically rescue animals because basically the protections for animals all collapsed when the Federation did, because all those things that the Federation protected and maintained are all gone as well. So where are we? Yep. She ends up hitting Booker and taking her stuff back. So it's like, yes, you betrayed me. You know, I haven't forgotten. I need you, but I haven't forgotten. There's also one thing that bothered me. They take a very light approach to the episode, and one thing they sort of don't really pay attention to, and other people have commented on it, because I've watched a couple of reviews like Jessie Genders and that, and she was sort of saying she wasn't bothered by it, but they do a lot of killing of people, and there's no mention of, doesn't this device have a stun setting or anything like that, and that's not very Star Trek. It's a bit action movie where they just kill, like, you know, when the goodies are like killing all the baddies, and it doesn't matter because they're baddies. Star Trek never did that. So it's a small thing, but I think it speaks to bigger problems. That's right. The baddies, the Orions and the Andorians and the other sort of creatures who are with them and henchmen eventually find them. And basically the joke is that the cargo is the creature and the creature eats them, and some of them get away, but then the creature actually eats Michael. And of course some people were quite happy to see this. Nerdrotic was very happy. He was like very happy. And had the season just had this bizarre turn where Michael's killed in the first episode, it would have been very made a lot of people very happy. But no, it's not what happens. He basically communicates with it and it spits her out. Yeah, there's not much more to the story than that. They eventually, of course, they go to the Federation outpost, and we knew how that was going to go. We've seen enough of that scene. Basically, he shows up. He says, "I've been waiting for you." Basically, I've been waiting for someone. I've been waiting for Hope, basically, to come, and you are it. Not necessarily Michael, so it's not necessarily about her, thank God, specifically, but just someone that will come and help him to restore the Federation. And he asks her to raise the flag because only commissioned officer, because it's all about, the military. There's another issue, the militaristic elements of Starfleet and the regulations and all these sort of rules and that he's sort of obsessed with. And Starfleet is not really about that. So he asks her to put up the flag because he's not a commissioned officer. So she commissions him as like a communications officer. And they put the flag up and they talk about hope in the future and faith, and they are elements of the episode where sort of faith is rewarded and trust is rewarded, and the idea of the Federation and the beliefs and the ideals that they mean something, that they don't die, that they do still exist, they exist in people. Those are interesting elements. They are kind of Star Trek, but again, we're in this rut with Star Trek where instead of just being in the utopian future, we are. The story of Star Trek is not the journey to the future, to why have I forgotten the name? I'm so tired. I probably shouldn't be doing this, but Utopia. I just lost the word. Star Trek is not the story of the journey to Utopia. It is being in Utopia and exploring that and exploring what humanity is without all our petty issues that stop us from doing that now in our time. So it's a soft reboot, but the characters have chemistry. Michael seem better written. We actually see examples of them being smart, not just being told how great they are, which seems to be something that the writers apparently heard as a criticism, because it seems to have changed, at least in this episode. It's only one episode. Sonequa, like I said, gets to act a bit more. Just reading my little liner notes on the edges. There are elements of the episode that do seem like fan fiction where, of course, she's the only one who can fix it. She's sort of showed up and she's like the one who can save this thing that's so important to her. It does sort of seem like Mary Sue fan fiction on some level, but it still is better than some of the other episodes from the other seasons. So it's not bothering me as much. I don't know why it's not bothering me as much. Like I said, I think it's anticlimactic. It was so traumatic, the idea of destroying the Federation, destroying Gene Roddenberry's vision, which meant a lot to me personally. And now actually getting to the episode, it's sort of like, oh, okay. It's just a bit numb, a bit of a non-event. And yeah, we see Booker and Michael, like I said, being smart. Time travel, we find out, has been banned and destroyed basically after the Temporal Wars. So they sort of concluded that Enterprise element and how they're going to use the Spore Drive now, because now this Starfleet ship is the only ship that can sort of move in space like that. So how they'll be used. And I don't know, they have a preview like this season on at the end of the episode, and it shows a lot, and it does look like you do see that the crew are traveling around on other ships, but it does almost look like Discovery is actually moving around. Now, whether that's just the scenes before it crashes or whether it gets off the planet, I've heard it stays on the planet the whole time, like Lost in Space, but other people saying no, they do travel. And the idea that they would explore the 21st century, restore the Federation, then get to explore the Federation while restoring it, would be a decent series. If they could get to that, I wouldn't mind a few more seasons of the show if they did that. I don't think they're going to do that, though. So I'm going to stop this at 15 minutes because it's too long. I should have spent less time talking about what happened in the episode. But yeah, so that's the first episode. It wasn't as bad as I thought. I've probably missed out a bunch of stuff, but I'm really tired, as you can hear from my voice. But yeah, it wasn't as bad as I thought, but I hate the idea of destroying the Federation, having it be dead for over a century, just so they can restore it, because that's the only story they know how to tell. Oh, everything's dark and horrible, but we can get to a good place, talk about it in theory, and never actually get to deal with it and be in it and have to actually create or maintain or show that vision that Gene Roddenberry had. We'll just we'll just destroy it and then talk about getting back to it. That seems to be this cycle that they seem to be in with Discovery and the JJ verse and the Disco verse and those other two universes which aren't the original canon Star Trek. And I really have no interest in. We're in the getting there now. We're at the very bottom of the start of getting there. We're in the mud right now with Trump and all that sort of stuff. But we do aspire to get to that, and I hope we will. But it's like they turned Star Trek's story, which had its own story of our future, into like our story of just trying to get there and survive. And Star Trek is not a story of survival and the journey to utopia. It's being in utopia and exploring humanity. So I don't think the series is ever really going to be Star Trek because of that. But we'll see what happens. Anything can happen. They turn on a dime and they change things up so much. Who knows? But I'm going to go because I'm tired. I sound like crap. And feel free to share, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think. If you think I'm just becoming numb to the whole thing and I should have a worse reaction, let me know. I'm just going to go and watch something else and forget about Discovery for another week.